Marvel Rivals has completely taken me by surprise. Playing as superheroes like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Moon Knight, and yes, Jeff the Land Shark is absolutely addicting. But while I was swinging and blasting my way through matches, getting my absolute butt kicked sometimes, an idea struck me. What if my own original superheroes were in Marvel Rivals? My superhero universe has characters like Bullet-Boy, brawlers like Hero X, and villains that could make for some seriously fun gameplay. But the problem is, I have no idea how to 3D model, so I'm gonna try and find some way to make these characters come to life. Then we'll break down their gameplay style and try to come up with some ideas for what the abilities of each character would be. So let's grab 3 characters from my universe and jump right in. Oh, and if you want to continue to watch me build my superhero universe and learn some tips on how to build your own, subscribe so you don't miss videos like this one. Now, there are 3 main roles in Marvel Rivals that sort of categorizes their play style and abilities. I'll choose my favorite hero, Bullet-Boy, as a duelist. These are the all-around flashy heroes who, in my opinion, are all pretty well-rounded, really great at making those high-risk, high-reward plays that can change everything in a match. I mean, in just his first issue, we can see him using his super speed to break up crowds of enemies. And since the game doesn't have a character that's explicitly a speedster, I think he'd make a fun addition to the roster. Now, there are a number of characters I thought would be great strategists and vanguards, but I decided to show the villains of this superhero universe some love. So I'm placing Diamond Dart, who, if you've seen my second redesigning villains video, you know is Bullet-Boy's love interest, as a strategist. These are the support characters that specialize in healing, buffing allies, and making sure the team stays in the fight. At first glance, Diamond Dart might not seem like the biggest threat, but given how stealthy she is, enemies might easily lose sight of her in the heat of a battle, and before they know it, have their abilities stolen and used against them, and breaking hearts while she's at it, especially if Bullet-Boy's on the other team. And for the Vanguards, I had to go with Crush, one of Bullet-Boy's most threatening adversaries. Vanguards are designed to be big, unstoppable powerhouses that can soak damage and keep their team safe. I like the idea of having a character like Crush in the game because he's the ultimate tank. If he somehow manages to catch one of the heroes, it's not gonna be good. Now it's time to take our Duelist, Strategist, and Vanguard and conceptualize them in the Marvel Rivals art style. Now, I've gotta say, the art style in Marvel Rivals is one of the big reasons I couldn't resist making this video. It has this really fun blend of anime and comic book art styles with a rendering style that feels right out of Spider-Verse or Arcane. It's bold, expressive, and honestly, it's just really fun to look at while you're playing. In order to bring that style into my designs, I'm pushing myself with some new techniques to get that pseudo 3D stylized look. I tried to give them this pose that indicated that they were standing at a character select screen. I just used a standard flat brush at low opacity to get that dimension and to really try and carve out lighting as if they were a 3D model. And before I'd ever get too far into the detailing, I made sure to add that iconic white rim lighting that you see across all the characters in the game. And while the designs do look kind of complicated, the trick is really just to add kind of unnecessary details, somewhat high-tech and sci-fi lines in the suit, as well as an overlaid texture to indicate their suit material. Now, the MCU in the past has gotten a bad rap for overcomplicating relatively straightforward designs, but I argue Marvel Rivals does it well. In some cases, creating designs for these characters that feel just right. I can definitely see why these designs wouldn't be to everyone's taste. I personally think that a game from this genre, with this approach to character animations, demands a more visually complex art style. It works for me in this case. Their proportions are exaggerated, and their personality really shines through and is instantly recognizable. And just like that, we've got Bullet-Boy, Diamond Dart, and Crush in the Marvel Rivals style. For not actually being 3D models, I think I've done a pretty okay job at matching the game's art, hopefully blending them right in with the game's character roster. Now comes the fun part of imagining how these 3 characters would play if they existed in Marvel Rivals. Now, I haven't spent nearly as long as the team at NetEase perfecting and balancing these abilities, so I'm really just gonna focus on making these abilities match the characters, adapting or enhancing abilities you might already see in the game, or coming up with ones that hopefully wouldn't break everything. First, we've got Bullet-Boy. As a fast and super precise duelist, Bullet-Boy's hyper dash lets him make a straight dash across the battlefield in a blink of an eye, dealing damage as he goes, serving as a great opportunity to escape or reposition. And the longer he charges his dash, the more damage it does. This adds to the strategy and risk of idly charging, with the reward of doing tons of damage. Bullet-Boy could also have a speed strike, going in for a quick, devastating punch that can stun enemies, leaving them momentarily vulnerable for follow-up attacks. One power Bullet-Boy has that I often forget that I gave him as a kid. Well, it's ultimate precision, so I thought one of his abilities could grant him his blasters that can deal massive damage, even at a distance. I think his ultimate would be kind of similar to Psylocke's, with a supersonic chain attack, in which Bullet-Boy can zip through enemies with lightning speed and dealing increased damage, all within that 10-meter radius, of course. Next, we have Diamond Dart. I thought she'd be a shoo-in character for a game like this, where there are characters like Loki who can full-on become other characters on the battlefield and use their moves against them. Her Power Plunder ability would allow her to steal moves from enemies, only for a limited time and only after hitting them with a barrage of her diamond shards. And of course, shooting these out is on a timer, so correctly choosing your target and adapting to use their powers correctly requires some finesse. I also figured that this barrage of diamonds can be used to heal teammates if they happen to hit one of them instead. When overwhelmed, she can turn invisible and use smokescreen to disappear in a flash or move behind enemy lines, escaping danger. She also has a standard melee attack where she can use her diamond claws if an enemy character is in too close. Now, I had some difficulty coming up with her ultimate, so I figured she could steal another ultimate from another player or unleash an explosion of diamond shards in multiple waves, doing increased damage. Happy to take suggestions for this one in the comments, and moves for any of these characters for that matter. Now, I imagine for a character like Crush, a villain that thrives on taking hits and turning them into power would have a kinetic absorption ability that allowed him to take on incoming damage as it simultaneously increases his ability to deal it out. So the more damage he takes, the stronger he gets, making him a literal tank that gets tougher the longer he's in the fight. Now, as someone that's fighting against him, you want to be careful not to get too close so he doesn't use his crushing grasp, where he can grab his opponents and hold them, doing impounding damage to them until he releases. I can imagine this being a lot like Jeff the Landshark's move, where as long as you've been eaten, you just incur damage until you get spit out. Add to that move a devastating earthquake slam, where he can use his giant fist to slam the ground with such force that it knocks back enemies, leaving them stunned. And for his ultimate, I figured he'd have a rage-fueled fury, a state where his damage and resistance goes through the roof, where Crush becomes a little hard to control, but anyone caught in his path is in for some serious trouble. Now, of course, for each of these roles, you have multiple characters you could choose from, which led me to think of some of my other superheroes. I can imagine Whipstar using her whip like Spider-Man's web to bring enemies closer, with the ability to kind of fly like Iron Man or Scarlet Witch. Hero X's base form might act more like Wolverine, but his ultimate would allow him to transform into one of his monsters, kind of like Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk. Insect is a no-brainer for a strategist character. She could send out a swarm of hornets, have poison-based powers, and of course the ability to glide like Moon Knight and heal like any other strategist. Marvel Rivals also features some kind of interesting team-up abilities too, and I think just like other characters in the game, the superheroes in my universe also have complementary attributes. For example, maybe Bullet-Boy and Whipstar, because they're siblings, have some kind of mutual G-Serum fueled synergy. And maybe a villain like Fear Factor could team up with a character like Hero X to really weaponize his emotion-based monsters in a unique way. Of course, Marvel's never gonna add characters outside their universe, but hey, that won't stop me from trying to have some fun imagining what it would be like. It's really exciting just to think about the possibilities. Even if it never comes to fruition, it's games like Marvel Rivals that get us talking and keep us inspired, encouraging us to move forward on our own projects, so that hopefully one day we can maybe play as our own characters in a video game. There is actually a way to play as Bullet-Boy characters in a real video game. There is a fan-made Bullet-Boy game on Roblox that just opened its public beta. According to the dev, it's not finished, it's still being worked on, but as I'm recording this video, this game brings all of the currently existing heroes and villains in my universe and gives you a sandbox to run around, use their powers, and fight each of the villains. It's really surreal to play as these characters in a video game, especially since the public beta went live just as I started making this video. I'll put a link to it below if you want to check it out. So I gotta know, let me down in the comments who you would like to play as in the Bullet-Boy universe if they were in Marvel Rivals. And I know you have your own superheroes too, so you gotta let me know in the comments if you've played Marvel Rivals, what would your superhero or supervillain's moves be? And if you want more from my original superhero universe, you can jump right into this video right here.